First of all, thank you very much for coming. I know this is the exam week, reading week. You are all busy having all kinds of deadlines. So thank you very much, despite the deadline coming to come here. And also the rain outside really doesn't help. So if possible, can you guys just come a little bit closer? And since there won't be too many, and we'll just have a conversation. Come on, guys. Come closer. I don't bite. Oh, the rain. Okay. First of all, let me introduce myself. I'm a research fellow here at MEI. I'm originally from China, but before I came to MEI here in Singapore, I studied at the American University in Cairo for a master's degree in Middle East Studies and the Arabic language, also in Egypt and Qatar and Damascus before the uprising, before everything turns really, really messy. And after that, I studied for a PhD in history. So I'm a historian by training. After that, my dissertation is on historical Chinese and Arab interactions from the mid-19th century to the end of World War II. So this topic is not really my particular research, but I'm very happy to share with you my thoughts on these things. I am a Chinese from China, but I do not speak on behalf of the Chinese government or policymakers. So I speak as I hope, as objective as I can be, a scholar, and to provide some basic knowledge about China's interactions with the Middle East today, and so that you can have your own informed opinion about a certain issue that is ongoing. Just a quick survey. How many of you are students? Okay. I want to know, despite the exams, deadlines, rings, what triggered your decision to come here today? I want to know. Yes, yeah, topic, and also probably the certificate. No problem with that, really, no problem. But the topic, the particular topic, I want to know what kind of image, the title of the topic that like really roused your curiosity. Uh-huh. Yes. Oh, well, those are good too. But anyway, thank you for liking my topic. Yeah, but I would like to know this particular, China's pivot to the Middle East. Which keyword, like, really triggered your curiosity that made you say, I want to go to this lecture? Pivot? And? Oh. That's okay. That's no problem. That's okay. So pivot, very good. Actually, I want to say. So this title is China's pivot to the Middle East, right? But I want to make a point that this pivot is two-directional. It's not just China turning to the Middle East. The Middle East is also turning to China. So it's a dance. I don't know, it's tango or waltz. We'll see. Okay, and also when I hear, because our lecture just for short term is Middle East, but what I refer to is Middle East and North Africa. So in the field, academic, dry, boring field, it's called MENA, Middle East and North Africa. So this is the map. Here is China. This is the tradition. Traditionally, we define it as the Middle East, Arabian Peninsula, Iran, Turkey, the Levant, Egypt. Actually, traditionally, it should also include Sudan, and two Sudans now. And I want to make a point that also North Africa, because I couldn't find a map that include highlighting both China and Middle East and North Africa. So North Africa also include Libya, Algeria, Tunisia, Morocco, and Mauritania. So my talk will be about China and the Middle East and North Africa. So I use the short term MENA, China and MENA. So you will know MENA is a region, not some lady's name. Okay. And today, I also, in addition to provide some basic information about these two regions' interactions recently, I would also like to invite you to think about the following questions. What do distant people, these two regions are quite far away from each other, right? What do distant people can do for you, with you, or against you? Three different propositions. What these two regions that are far away from each other, right, can do for each other, with each other, or badly against each other. We'll see. And when I say this, the first image that comes to people's mind usually about China is this, panda. And then Chinese language, which is really weird for non-native speakers. 你好, China. And what is the image of MENA for you guys? I want this to be a dialogue. I don't want to be a monologue. Come on, nobody wants to listen to a middle-aged woman talk. So, monologue. Sorry, a conversation. Image of MENA. What is your image?
Desert.
Huh? Desert. Okay. What else? Also, what else? Falafel. Okay. Yes. So this is my choice. Camel. Someone did it right. And desert, also right, and also Arabic, another very, very difficult language for non-native speakers. For what I really mean generally English, European language speakers, for them, both Chinese and Arabic are really weird. So these are the two images of two regions that are very far away from each other, and culturally, linguistically, very different from each other too. Why they are interacting, and what they can do for each other, with each other, or bad against each other. Well, I hope it's not the case. And also when I say image and culturally many differences between these two regions, this is an image of Cairo, architectural styles. So mosques, minaret. This is a photo I took while I was living in Cairo. And next one for Chinese architectures, I think that will be very familiar to most of you. What does this look like to you? Yes, exactly. It looks like a temple, right? But it's actually not a temple. But anyway, I'll leave that later. But despite all these linguistic difficult differences, architectural, cultural, religion, and we all know Chinese Buddhism, Taoism, or atheism, and in the Middle East definitely is Islam, Christianity, or Judaism, right? So despite all these differences of these two regions, I actually want to argue they actually have a lot similarities today. For example, this. I think we can recognize what is this? Shanghai, yes. And what is particularly the thing striking to you for Shanghai? Yeah, TV tower, sorry. Yes, TV tower, yes. But look at the air. And look at this guy. What's that? Huh? Huh? No, not a mosque. No. This is the Shanghai TV Tower. Yes. And this is the Huangpu River. But this is actually quite an iconic kind of a picture showing the air pollution. We all know it's in the news all the time. Sandstorm, one of those days. And same thing, this is in Cairo. This is the Nile. This is a very famous bridge. It's called October the 6th Bridge in Cairo that link downtown Cairo with Zamalek, another island. And these bridges, and this is another parallel bridges, are, obviously not very good with technology. But these bridges usually, surprisingly, are venue for young people to date. I will explain the reason why. But this, again, is another day that is very, very, air quality is very, very bad. So this is one similarity, and there are many, many more. I'll show you later. And then come back to this. Just now somebody says this is a temple, right? And indeed, I agree. If I didn't know better, I would say this is a temple too. It looks like a temple. But if we go closer, we will see this. This is the upper part of this temple. This is actually a minaret, a part of the mosque in Beijing, actually. The mosque is called Niujie, which literally translated as the Ox Street. That's the area for Muslims living in Beijing traditionally. So they have a mosque, and this is the minaret of the mosque within that mosque. And if we get closer, we can see this is a traditional Chinese architectural style, right? But with Arabic, calligraphies. Can anyone read? La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. So no God but God. Prophet Muhammad is the prophet of Allah. So this, I'm trying to make a point. Yes, they are very different, but they also share many similarities. So back to this point about China here, MENA all the way here. In between, there are also South Asia continent, Central Asia region, right? Here, Russia, Indian Ocean, the Pacific, Korea, Japan. These are all China's neighbors. Actually, the Middle East is not China's neighbor. But in between, there are ways of regions or peoples from far away from each other can build relations. And in between these places, as I said, these things, these are not just concrete ideas. These are real peoples, have many similarities. This is a photo of a rural girl in the White Desert, western part of Egypt. She was trying to sell handmade basket to tourists. So rural girls in Egypt. Another similarity, rural Chinese girls working very hard to earn a living. So the similarity here is the rural population, the poverty of rural population. This is another similarity I'm trying to convey to you. Next one, this boy. Oh, I really like him. This is the boy. I lived in the neighborhood when I was studying Arabic in Damascus. And he is the family, not breadwinner, but bread carrier. Always carried bread and, even if at his young age, he has to do a lot of hard work for his family. And next one, this is another Chinese boy. This is actually quite sad. But anyway, his parents were those immigrants into the city to collect garbage, and especially electronic waste, and to distort them, separate all those electronic wastes. And in China, there are a lot of, we call the left home kids, because the parents moved from rural area to China to work, but apparently this is the boy that the parent didn't leave, but put them together in the workplace, which is electronic waste dump places. So another thing I'm trying to convey is poverty and rural population moving to the countryside, to the city. Another one would be beggars and vegetable sellers, elderly, mothers and daughters, sisters and brothers. These are actually quite similar to me. When I see those photos, I see very similar kind of life dilemmas between the vast space we just saw. And here, among these societies, at different levels of societies, there are always kids like you guys, are curious, want to know more. That's why you came, despite all the deadlines and rain, right? I take it that way, at least. Always wonder what the world is like outside his particular town or country. Or this guy, this little boy in China, studying, but always wonder what the world outside that the particular native place that he was from. So that's why I interpret it this way. China recently announced this Belt and Road Initiative. Does anyone know what it is about? Anything? Have you heard about it? Okay. Okay, this is one of China's major development plan to build large-scale infrastructures, such as railways, road, highways, telecommunication towers, all kinds of infrastructure, like large-scale infrastructures, in order to build the connections between China and other parts of the world, especially from China with its neighbor India, Central Asia, Middle East. Here is the traditional definition of the Middle East. And actually, I couldn't find a better map, so this is the one I found. With North African countries as well, and beyond, other African countries and Europe. So it's called the Belt and Road Initiative. It is evoking the romantic notion of the term Silk Road. Have you ever heard of the term Silk Road? Okay. BRI, so Belt and Road Initiative, is a development plan to build large-scale infrastructure to connect distant parts of the world together to facilitate the transportation of people, ideas, goods, and etc., etc. So this is the official definition, not mine. Later I'll tell you what's my definition. And this particular initiative has two main parts. One is the land-based economic belt, and there are altogether 6 of them. 6, they call it economic belt or corridors. For example, this one from China to Mongolia-Russia corridor. So with this Mongolia-Russian neighbor, right? This one from Western China to called the New Eurasia land bridge. So from Western China past Central Asia, this whole vast area of Central Asia, especially Kazakhstan, and all the way to connect with the Eurasian continent. Another belt is, again, from Western China to, this part is China to Central and West Asia corridor. So this is the part that include the traditional definition of the Middle East. They should also include MENA, North African regions as well, as I mentioned at the beginning. But this is a new policy. It is being developed as of now, actually. So, and then another belt is China, Western China, again, Pakistan corridor, this well, also with China's neighbor. Another one is from southern, this time is southwest China, through the China, Bangladesh, India, Myanmar corridor here. And this one, last one, is most pertinent to Singapore. And I hope to, if you are interested, I would love to explain more. But today's topic is about China and the Middle East. But I'll just briefly say this. This is linking southwest China, particularly Yunnan province, through the Southeast Asian, mainland Southeast Asian countries, the continent, all the way to link to Singapore. So this is the 6th land-based economic belt. And then the 2 components of the maritime part is starting from China's coastal region, first, to South Pacific trade, with South Pacific, with Australia, with all the Philippines, Indonesia, so this region. And it's, again, as I said, this policy is so new, it's not very well defined yet. It's being defined as we are speaking, actually. Defined and redefined. But the clear thing is, another major maritime route is here, from China's coastal region to here, the Southeast Asia region, past here, the Suez Canal, the Suez Canal is here, is the Strait of Malacca and Singapore, and then come to the Indian Ocean region, Indian Ocean world, actually, connect with here, Aden, and then the Red Sea. Past here is the Suez Canal, the Mediterranean here, this is all ocean-based, and then all the way to different ports in Europe. So this is the vision, this is the economic development plan of building large-scale infrastructures, including ports, ports, airports, railways, railways and telecommunication towers and basic roads to connect China with different parts of the world, including the very, very distant Middle East, MENA region. Actually, all Middle East countries have expressed their interest and embraced this initiative. The reasons for coming up with this policy is, we all know China has this foreign policy of non-interference. You do your business, I do mine. We support each other, we respect each other, but we don't get involved. That has been China's policy for a long time. Actually, about 10 years ago, around 2006, when I was studying for my MA in Middle East Studies at American University in Cairo, I was writing my MA thesis at the time on the topic of China's foreign policy to the Middle East. And I interviewed a lot of the diplomats or businessmen or living in the region or China's Middle East Studies experts based at Chinese universities to ask them, what was China's plan for the Middle East region? What was China's Middle East policy concern or priority at the time? So that was 2006. At the time, to my very disappointment, actually, a lot of the answer I gave was the Middle East was too far away from China. It's not on China's priority list for foreign policy at all. China's foreign policy priority was, first of all, big powers, US, Japan, Russia, all those big powers. First of all, that's first layer of priority for China's foreign policy in general. A second one is China's neighbors, these regions, right? So at the time, I was focusing on the Middle East, and the reason they gave me was not our priority. Yeah, we will respect each other. Yeah, we will, but not very politically involved. But from the abstract you read just now, for this talk, we know that now China has getting gradually involved with certain issues in the Middle East, and China has issued the very first policy paper related to the Middle East last year. That was unprecedented. China never issued any official policy papers. Last year was the first one regarding to the Arab world. And now Belt and Road initiative was announced. So many people have been actually, maybe not among students, but among political analysts, about think tank people, about policy advisors, were all thinking, why? Why China is doing this? Again, I do not represent the government. I don't know specifically what their mind was thinking, but from what I gathered as a scholar, here are the reasons I think it's worth considering. First of all, this is actually domestically a major strategy for domestic development. As I said just now, there were many similarities between these two regions. China, yes, we know China now is the second largest economy in the world, but China still has many, many poor regions, like this guy, like this family, like this elderly, and and they are mainly in Western China. And this plan aims at linking China's underdeveloped Western region to different parts of the world by building infrastructure so that they can move, right? In China, there is a saying, 要想富先治路, 先修路. Anyone understand? Sorry? Okay. 要想富先修路, meaning if you want to get prosperous, build a road first. This is actually one of the major debate among political analysts, saying that why China is building all these large infrastructures? We don't need them. Why do you need them? There is no demand for it. At least this is one strand of argument. But Chinese thinking is, if we build the road, people can go out and other people can come in, and then the demand and supply will start. So that's the saying, 要想富先修路. If you, especially for very remote areas that are not very well connected to other parts of the world, right? If, imagine, you were in, I don't know, a tiny village in Xinjiang. If there were no good roads for them, how do they know what's the outside world, right? So this is Chinese way of logic, way of thinking. We'll first build it, and then with this infrastructure, goods can flow in, can flow out as well. People can flow in, people can flow out as well. So it's multi-directional, right? And this is not just to build infrastructure. Underneath it, China, because now become the second largest economy, has a lot of, surplus money, bought a lot of American treasury bond. That doesn't really help. So why don't we invest the money into building some things? So this is also a domestic investment, a way of investing. So these large-scale infrastructures are mainly China-financed. And later I will talk about how these things are financed. There are many, many different ways. But basically, the logic is we will use our money to invest. Yes, we know it's risky. These regions are not without problems, a lot of problems actually. But we are willing to take a risk. We invest our money and also use Chinese laborers, because China also has, population problem, too many of us. And a lot of them cannot find employment. China's economy is gradually becoming privatized and very capitalistic as well. And a lot of the old state-owned large companies went bankrupt. especially in this region, actually, Northeast, where I'm from. It's called the Chinese Rust Belt. Anyone from the US? Do you know what does Rust Belt mean? No? Pittsburgh? Detroit? Yes. Heavy industrial cities, but have become now, how do I say? A lot of debt, yes. Unemployment, not underemployment. Unemployment, because of the cost of the industry, a lot of them have outsourced to other cheaper countries and laborers, right? And this particular region of China, Northeast, Dongbei, this region used to have a lot of chemical plants, auto plants, oil reserves, many heavy industries, but then in the 50s, 60s, 70s, were all state-owned, right? But starting from 1978, China has this policy of opening up. That's just, it doesn't matter whether it's a white cat or a black cat. As long as the cat can catch the mouse, it's a good cat. The basically is to privatize a lot of those big state-owned companies. And as a result, a lot of people were laid off, unemployed. A lot of them from this region as well. That's why they moved to coastal China, to seek employment. Actually, many of them also come to Singapore nowadays. A lot of them. There are academic papers written about it. The unemployed labor coming to Singapore from this particular part of China. But anyway, so another logic behind this initiative is also use China's money, use Chinese laborers to build infrastructures to connect with different parts of the world so that goods, ideas, people can move to boost up the economy. So that's the basic logic. So first of all, domestically, it is a domestic development strategy. Second, this is my analysis, this is not official. So second, for internationally, you build infrastructure. China has built a lot of infrastructure domestically already. So this is going out. So that means you are cooperating, working together with countries not within your sovereign territory anymore, right? So internationally, it is, at least according to one scholar I recently met, like last week actually, he said, internationally, it is an initiative. It's an experiment. It is trial by error. It is not without cost. It is an initiative, an experiment to see what China can do together with other countries and for other countries as well. And for China's, of course, as well. As I said at the beginning, I invite you to contemplate on the question, what do people or societies from a distant region do for each other, with each other, or against each other? These are all scenarios, right? So this is the logic. Internationally, it was an experiment to see whether this might work or not. And also, lastly, this is my own observation. Because China's past foreign policies is always, you do your business, I do mine, we don't interfere each other. And China was often criticized as not being a responsible stakeholder in the international community. This, I'm sure anyone who read news, this is not new at all, saying that China is taking all the benefit, mainly oil and gas, natural energies, from the Middle East regions, coming back to China, and not doing anything really for the region. So only reaping the benefit without contributing back. And to my personal observation, I think this is also China's initiative to try to give back to the communities, international communities, both neighboring and non-neighboring, MENA in particular, because we are Middle East Institute, so I talk about China and the Middle East. But in between, there are many other regions, Mongolia, Russia, Eurasia, Central Asia, South Asia, here, Southeast Asia as well. So, more concretely, what kind of infrastructure they are building? This one is the light rail for Hajj pilgrimage in Saudi Arabia. We all hear the news every year during Hajj time. There are so many trampees, crowded, disease, because it was a time when people concentrated into one time. And there are many, always, every year the news is about, people stepping into each other and then causing large-scale trampees casualties. So this is one of the infrastructure that can help improve the transportation. Another one, this is the water conservation project in Algeria, because we know North Africa, and just now someone said Middle East mainly is desert, right? So irrigation for agricultural development is a major issue. So China infrastructure also include water reservation, water towers, irrigation plants, things like that. So this is another one. And feel free to challenge me and ask, this is not, everything has two sides, or maybe pros and cons. I'm trying to give you the basic information, then I hope we can have a dialogue. And then this one is the new Suez Canal project. We all heard of the Suez Canal, right? It was built when? Anyone else? Good. Yes, finished, opened on that year. Good, very good. So this is the old one. And with whose money it was built? Partly? Yes. Anyone else? Huh? Actually, mainly French. But anyway, you were right. Yes, good. Very good. If I have something, I will, give you some. But I don't. But anyway. So this was the old Suez Canal. And today, in a new wave of large-scale infrastructure building, and building railways or building Suez Canal, this was not new, large-scale infrastructure. In the late 19th century, the British, French, German, all of them did the same, building railways in China, in the Middle East. So what I see, China, the Belt Road Initiative, it's just a new wave of large-scale infrastructure building. And so China financed and initiated, started in cooperation with Egypt about the new Suez Canal project. So this is the expansion here. So basically, try to expand the canal so that they can have bigger capacities, letting big container ships pass by. What else? University Alliance of the Silk Road, including the US. The US is part of it. So far, I don't know what's the concrete result will come out of it, but at least this is part of it. So it is infrastructure building, but infrastructure building also include building, infrastructures for education. This is the logo, so the camel with the river, or you can interpret it as a belt, a ribbon. This is a book. So this is the logo. And underneath this, there is, voila, this. Silk Road Robotic Innovation Competition. I think everybody knows that in China, one app is very popular today. Is the delivery app, like Food Panda or Deliveroo in Singapore. But in China, there are many other delivery apps too. The thing is, because China has population problem, but it's also a population, you can say, asset, because yes? Yes. I think it's open to all. In particular, it's related to actually to science and technology of infrastructure building. Yes, in the past, Russian built railways with Russian cogs, a different type of particular rail cogs. But now, for at least this part of China, Southeast Asia part, the new Pan-Asian railway cogs, a different type of cogs, and it's just different technology. But again, as I said, these are all very new. These initiatives was only announced in 2013, not even 4 years. But it seems like going to be a long-term development. Domestically, strategy, and experiment internationally. That's why so many people are commenting about it. If you read newspapers about it, it's always about Belt and Road. And yeah, including NUS, because NUS has a pseudo campus, right? And this one is robotic innovation competitions. Robots. And back to my delivery thing. And I just read news actually from Straits Times the other day about, in China, robots delivering food. I mean, it's just an anecdote. I'm just trying to say a flavor of things that I hope can spark your interest to investigate more. Don't just believe my word, for my word. And with all those infrastructure buildings, right, and technology and education infrastructure of knowledge, right, we hope we can reduce the roads. This is a parking road in Cairo, actually, close to the old AUC campus in downtown Meydan Tahrir. So this is how people park, like this. So with better roads, one day we hope people don't need to park this way anymore. And this is the Middle East, war-torn region. We all know. This is 2006 during the Israel-Hezbollah conflict. At the time, I was a TV journalist. I was a correspondent. So I took a photo of this. This was the airport, Beirut airport, near that region. So we hope with this kind of connectivity and infrastructure building, we'll have less of these, and less of this too. Can you recognize who is this? No, not refugee. Maybe in the line it would be better. It would speak better. Can anyone help me with the light? Because you will see from here. It's okay. Yeah, it's a girl. Yes, first of all, it's a lady. And she's a guard at the checkpoint, actually, with a gun. Here. It's really. What I'm trying to say is less tired female soldiers. I'm not saying there won't be conflict anymore. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, hopefully, with these, we'll have less tired soldiers on either side who won't war. Right? And more this. This is a concert in Damascus. More exchange of culture, language, music. This is actually a Turkish music concert in Damascus when I was living there. And this is an Algerian concert in Algeria when they hold their festivals. And more this. this particular photo very, very symbolic to me. I find it in I mentioned earlier the New Jie Mosque in Beijing. Remember about the architecture? This is in the gift shop of that mosque. It's a cup, a tea cup, tea. Both Chinese and Middle Easterns drink tea, although they drink different type of tea, but they do drink tea. And this is Muslims, and this Allah Akbar, and this is 传承信仰, meaning pass on our traditions and faith. In Arabic and Chinese, this. I don't know why, just personally, I find it very, very appealing to me. So I hope with this kind of initiative, I'm not saying that it will be 100% all roads, you know it's not possible. And what I'm trying to convey to you today is Belt Road Initiative can maybe give us a new vision of future. You know, how people from distant part of the region can interact with each other, especially now when the world is so interdependent of each other. And what can we do for each other, with each other, or sometimes, sadly, against each other? Because it does happen. In the excerpt, it says, what does China's rise or initiatives in the Middle East mean for the US? Right? I'm not saying that this is all good, but I welcome your questions and challenges. And then to my own definition, Belt Road Initiative is mutual benefits, mutual respect, because China and the Middle East are old civilizations who are very proud of their own culture and history. So mutual respect is very important to build trust. And hopefully inspiration for all. Thank you.
Question relates to China's involvement in Libya and Syria specifically, and there's been some debate about why it was that China acquiesced to European and American intervention to remove Gaddafi, whereas in Syria, a country which they had much less investment in, they supported Russia in blocking United Nations and US resolutions to intervene in Syria from an early stage. So some people have argued that it is precisely because China got cut out of the post-Libyan, post-Gaddafi reconstruction oil deals by the US and by Europe that led them to support the Russian side in the Syrian conflict. I wonder what your thoughts were with regards to that issue specifically. My second question is a bit more broad and deals with, like you mentioned, China's increased involvement in the Middle East. And I suppose I wonder what you make of China's ability to avoid getting entangled in the Middle East as they get more involved, both on the intercultural, interpersonal level, as well as on the economic and political one. And what comes to mind is, I think in 2014, after Russian involvement in Syria, we saw activists in Dara burning a Chinese flag along with the Russian flag, and that's a first. And historically, there have been protests in Algeria about Chinese labor coming in and supposedly stealing jobs, or the perception that Chinese workers are doing so. So how do you think it's even possible for China to navigate through these circumstances, both on the level of the people who are in the Middle East, as well on an intergovernmental and a level, on international level as well?
Okay, good. Thank you very much. These are two very good questions. I wonder, are you a political scientist major?
Yeah.
Okay, that explains. Yes, on the Libya and Syria question, again, this is my interpretation. On the government level, of course, when they made a decision to acquiesce or not support, it has other considerations for sure. And for the Libya case, China did have want to have more oil from before, because Libya actually used to have very close relations with Taiwan for a long time. It's among one of the last countries that established diplomatic relations with China. So it is very possible from the government decision point of view, but again, I don't know for the particular, but I think your analysis is plausible. And for Syria, it's another question. Actually, actually this time China decided to not support either side. So it's mainly just being silent. But now actually, because of the criticism, China is now at least thinking. I read an interview the other day, is China is planning to getting involved in the reconstruction of Syria. So back to my earlier point about China trying to become more of a responsible holder. So that's the plan in it. Is it possible for China to navigate because it's already so dangerous? I say it's possible if the government is making right policies and really get to the nitty-gritty point of local situation, not just sitting in Beijing and just think everything they can just push a button or things like that. No, I believe good decisions depends on people on the ground to really navigate. And actually, China last year appointed a very high-level security personnel in Damascus. I think it's probably for the reason of planning for future. So it really depends on the people on the ground. And these things happen, and the Middle East is so war-torn with so many tribal factors and sectarianisms or different strands of religions. China is actually taking a risk, I would say. But it depends on, in the end, the people who are implementing these big projects can do it right. Yes. And that actually also, I would say, if I recommend, including educating Chinese themselves to know more about the Middle East culture. Because a lot of, again, Chinese and Middle Eastern peoples are old civilizations. They're very proud of each other. But to be very honest, they're also very ignorant of each other as well. So a lot of times the people they put on the ground do not know Arabic, or do not know, maybe know only the Fusha part of the Arabic, not the Amiya, the local dialect people are speaking. So if I can make some recommendation, I would recommend the government to educate the Chinese people as well about the people you are dealing with from the basic level, culture, language, people part. And your second question, entanglement. I think it's related to your first question. It is very difficult, but just because it's difficult doesn't mean that we should not do it, right? If we don't take any risk, we don't do anything, nothing will get resolved. If we take the risk, we do something, we may fail 60%, but still there is a 40% hope. I did this. So. Okay, thank you. Yes.
Hi, I'm Kenneth from SMU. So I have two questions as well. So one's related to directly to the Belt and Road Initiative. So it's regarding the world systems theory, where do you think it might be possible that China is creating dependency, as in trying to be a hub country, yeah, the core country in terms of economy. So sorry for being a skeptic, but yeah.
No. As I said, I'm only introducing the basic things, and then I welcome you to challenge it, and we have a dialogue, right? It's a mutual learning process. Yes. World system theory. What's your second question?
Yeah, the second question is relating to security, because by opening up the Chinese borders to these countries are inherently dangerous. So do you think that
Who is dangerous?
as in the countries that it is opening up its borders to, some of them are inherently dangerous at this point of time. So
You mean China's neighbors?
yes, that's right. So do you think like security in China will like increase, like be stepped up because of these initiatives? Yeah.
Again, very good. Are you also economist training? Political science. Wallerstein. Okay. Yes, this question has been asked also by many people as well. Is this China's way of building its own empire? Of course, officially, the government would say no, because we suffered from imperialism. We will not do the same. But when the British and French started it, they were also quite idealistic too, right? They didn't think in the end they would colonize and did all horrible things too. So for this, I cannot say. I don't know for the future. We have to wait and see. I hope not, but I don't know. Because you're right, Wallerstein's theory is core, and then all the others are only supplying raw materials for the good of the core economy without developing the industry of the periphery. I hope not, because this time, this is the beginning, only the infrastructure part, right? But if we can incorporate with local laborers, not just letting only Chinese laborers take the job to build the road, also letting local laborers to take some of the jobs, or at least train some of them to know how to build the road gulf and things like that. That can be developed for both sides. That's what the government is trying to say. I hope they will do the same as they say. But that's really a question for the future. I cannot answer, but it's a great question. Is it the neighboring countries very dangerous? Define danger. This is what I'm trying to debunk about these Islamic countries, China's neighbors. Sorry. Starting from Western Xinjiang, Tibet, problematic, and then Central Asia or Islamic, and Pakistan, India also not very always on good terms with China. So danger in the sense, from the point of view of the state, of the ruling authority, they may think so. But I believe in bottom-up approach. If you really get to know your neighbor, know their languages, you know they're just another human being, even if they're Muslim or Jew or whatever. We all have our own struggles. Danger is only a lot of time heightened in our imagination when we are not confident enough. When we are not confident enough that we know the other person. But in Chinese, the 孙子兵法, the 知己知彼，百战百胜. If you know your enemy in the sense, if you know who you are dealing with, you will have a much better chance of succeeding. So that's what I'm not saying that how do I say? Middle East is dangerous. When I quit my job to go to Egypt, all my family members think I went crazy. But I find it incredibly enriching for my own life. When I understand them, I'm not afraid of them anymore. Because at the end of the day, we are all human beings.
Thank you, Shangwen, for a very optimistic talk, I must admit.
Yeah, I'm very idealistic.
Indeed. I wish I had some of your optimism. I don't have a question except perhaps a very broad question. Okay. You talk about the fact that China is building all these infrastructure for the benefit of the countries geopolitically, because they tend to be rural, perhaps underdeveloped, and the peripheries. But more importantly, I think we should note that they tend to be authoritarian regimes and difficult places, basically. This is because we're in the safety, right, of a safe country. However, I'm really, really concerned about the environmental implications of all these huge mega infrastructure. And as far as I can tell, they benefit China and Chinese people and laborers. They don't benefit the people, the local economy, very, very few. And I give you a very classic example of Laos. You see it because in northern Laos, it's overtaken by Chinese. The marketplace are full of Chinese traders. They establish shops. The workforce on these mega infrastructure, including dams, are Chinese. They live apart from the rest of the local communities. And in the meantime, they're tearing the environment into bits. And I mean some really valuable forest, amazing waterways and stuff. Anyway, to cut the long story short, I mean, you've got to be a fool to believe this big story, you know. I have to be skeptical when I see such things. So I worry about when you say that perhaps it has to do with policy makings and the implementation, and it's a process of educating Chinese people about the outside world. Great for the Chinese, not good for the villager in Laos, in rural Laos. For him, jobs are taken away. There is no trickle down to them at all. So, environmental ignorance on the part of the Chinese government is amazingly destructive. Yeah, so basically it's a comment as well as maybe a question whether you've come across literature that says otherwise.
Yes, of course. Of course.
Thank you.
I said, I welcome your challenge, of course. I think I'm very idealistic, and that's what drove me to leave my comfort zone to the outside. And I'm very happy to be a nerdy academic, actually. But the example you give, and the example you give about the Chinese laborers in Algeria, and I can give you more examples in Nigeria, not just Algeria, Nigeria. In Saudi, actually, got into problems too. That's why I work on labor issues on my book project. Short term, yes, it is very detrimental environmentally, and it's the same case when Chinese government is doing development within China as well. China's building of the Three Gorges Dam, right? Many temples were drowned. Environmental pollution is not just outside China, it's within China as well. And that's why I show you this one. The air pollution, food poisoning, Chinese, this development policy within or outside cause equally detrimental impact. And I'm not saying it's good. I really hope the government, or whoever is advising the government, can think of ways to mitigate these damages or educate the people. As for the local Lao people you mentioned, or the local Algerians, I said, if I can give policy advice, I would advise Chinese companies to employ some of the local laborers as well. I would definitely, I agree with you. I'm not denying these. But I believed in this plan because I believe it's a different way of thinking. It's a new way of life. It depends on how you think you can do for, with, or against each other. Again, I invite you to contemplate this question. This is not just China and the Middle East. It can be, I don't know, Singapore and Malaysia. It can be US and Japan. It can be any country. Any country has to think about these questions. But I do believe by building these infrastructures, long term, we will see benefit. Yes.
No. Drug trafficking would be much more easier with all this.
What traffic?
Drug trafficking.
Oh, drug traffic.
Afghanistan is right in the middle of that.
Opiates, puppies. Possible, yes. Everything has two sides.
And arms, and the transport of arms.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, in the past they just transport arms with camels and horses, donkeys. Now they use trains. Yes, these things will always happen.
Or maybe
The flow, connectivity is not always good. The connectivity is both ways. You can move faster, but also come with disease, possible, arms, opiates, whatever. But this is, I see, a way of development, a different stage of development.
And the other question, China block all the connection ways like Facebook, Google, WhatsApp, everything. Why they don't start from unblocking these?
They should. They should. They really should.
It's precisely why they need to educate the Chinese people.
Yeah.
They're blocked from the outside world, but they want to educate it by the parties.
What was the reason they blocked it in the first place?
Information control. They want people to see only one side of things, which is not good. No. Anyone? Yes.
When mentioning about China's pivot towards the Middle East and closer relationship to the Middle East, so I was wondering if the situation in Xinjiang would be a factor in this relationship or this closer relationship between China and the Middle East, where obviously majority would be Muslim population.
It will really depend on how the Chinese government manage about this Xinjiang issue. In the past, at least, the government has always tried to say these people are separatists, right? Maybe there were some, I'm not saying all of them, but the problem is always heightened when one thing happens and then trigger a whole event. Actually, I think it was 2012, something like that. There was an incident happened actually not in Xinjiang. It was actually in Guangzhou, but it was the Uyghur Muslims who moved to Guangzhou to work. Again, you go from Western China to coastal cities to work, and got into this argument with Han Chinese over there. And then triggered the whole thing. The government, first reaction was always just shut down, and control. But in this age, I don't think the more controlled, the more rebellious people would become. It still shows that the authority is not confident enough to use the way of trying to control or monitor or whatever. And this applies to all governments. No. I'm not saying it's good. No. That's why I become an early academic.
Sorry for the follow-up. Yeah, I think my question relates to Xinjiang as well, because I understand that there's a lot of little skirmishes in Xinjiang, and also it's a natural response for authoritarian government to clamp down on these things. But isn't it a contradiction when China wants to open up its liberalize its borders and allow foreign human flows between, because it inevitably affects the politics in China. So that's with regards to my follow-up question about security in China. The second question I had in mind is regarding the pivot to Middle East, is it really a pivot? Because it seems that China still has other priorities, and Middle East kind of like oh, by the way, Middle East kind of. So, what's your opinion about that? Yeah.
Good. And also, actually, link this with Farid's question also about Xinjiang. Just now, I forgot to mention. Actually, a lot of times, the problems between the two are not really religious problems. It's mundane. Really, it's mundane. This is exactly. I studied World War I, laborers, mundane, fighting for bread. It's not really because Muslims really cannot, believe in Christians. No, it is more about bread, food, or the incident I mentioned in Guangzhou. It's not really trigger mechanism was not religion. Later, when it was excavated into religious things, arguments at least. So it really, how do I say? For security, for religions, if these projects can bring jobs to people, whether it's Chinese or local, and I hope will employ more local laborers, people will have less economic grievances, and there will be less, hopefully, less conflict. One of the things, for example, my mom, when she came to visit me, would say, why Singapore is so safe? She always said, because that's the notion, right? Singapore is very safe. I said, because everybody has food and shelter. What's the point of going cry? I mean, I know this is very simple logic, and we are talking among students, we're just conversation dialogue. I don't want to pretend to be very sophisticated, which I can, but I don't think it's necessary, right? Why be so? Once these economic drives or plans can really one day trickle down, because China, when China opened up its economy in 1978, nobody believed it would work either. I was born in 1979, and my family was really poor at the time. We were still using coupons, caution, ration coupons. But look at now, it may take time. It will take time, not may, it will take time. And all the criticisms are good, because this will at least push the government to think further, to refine their policies, at least refine their implementation.
Your government, the Chinese government, is educated?
Yes, environmental. Then this is, what about the US, India, Japan? It's everyone's, I said inspiration for all. I didn't say inspiration for China. It might be too late. That's why I really need idealistic people like me, really, to believe in something at least. And I pay price. It's not all easy. To go there, live there, study there, learn their language. Yeah. At least we're doing something. And at least you're coming out to learn about it, which is very far away from your area, right? So that's something you're doing as well.
No, that they can build it sustainably since the beginning. They can plan to build it.
China is planning renewable energy, electronic cars. They are developing. Yes, they are. It's just because this is such a big thing. It is so complex.
Also the scale.
Yes.
The scale of the project.
Yes. But I don't think scale is necessarily bad. It can be more risky, but I don't think the scale itself is bad. It is just more risky. It depends on how you manage it, how you implement it.
So just to clarify the question, I referring to like competition between
In human flows, yes, it depends on who is on those trains, crossing the borders, right? It's not just, I don't know, small products. There are also people, merchants, traders, right? Interpreters. So I don't think it's possible for government to really control, like seal down the policy, the border completely. So it is a paradox, it's a oxymoron thing, but I don't think it's possible. It is, you're right. Your observation, it is contradictory. It is indeed. But so whoever is in charge can see it or find a better solution. Anything else? If you're hungry, and go back, write your papers. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much.